Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. I got a little TV recommendation for you today, a series that I just finished watching, and one that actually kind of surprised me. When I first put it on, I thought the concept at the time period it was made, I don't know, I just didn't think I was probably going to like it. Figured I'll watch an episode or two and then maybe move on to something else, but I was surprisingly intrigued by it. The TV show in question is The Invisible Man, made in 1958, 2 seasons, but only 13 episodes in each. So it's practically a one-season wonder. It was made in the UK, aired on ITV, and here in the United States, it aired on CBS. So let's take a look. We're going to look at some images from the first episode and a couple images from later episodes. It's not a highly complicated series to explain, but I do want to go in a little bit to why I think that it surprised me as a TV series will go. So we begin in episode 1 with a man putting a guinea pig into an oven. No. He's not putting a guinea pig into an oven. He's putting a guinea pig into this chamber, and this is part of an experiment using some sort of radiation. And we're in that time period when some sort of radiation, you couldn't see my, wait, where are we? There we go. Okay, with that one higher, lower, no. Some sort of radiation was enough to explain amazing happenings. Radioactive spiders were also pretty good for that. So they put the little guinea pig in, and they open up this lead chamber. They take this little isotope out or what have you, and then gradually the guinea pig disappears. Now, there is an accident, though, in the lab. Something's breached, and before Dr. Peter Brady, Peter Brady, it made me laugh every time I watched the show. Dr. Peter Brady is exposed to the same radiation and becomes the Invisible Man. So this is not a retelling, really, of the original sci-fi horror story. Different person, different circumstances. Does not drive him insane. Also, and they actually show this, it turns the clothing he's wearing invisible as well, which handles the problem of, in order for the Invisible Man to take advantage of his invisibility, he has to run around naked. We are thankfully spared that in this series. And so we get the Invisible Man. Now, so what did I particularly like about this series? Well, first of all, it's a good concept. The special effects are really good. The episodes are very clever. And it's reasonably well acted. So for a TV show, 1958, a sort of action adventure, it really hits all the different things, little check boxes that you would need. So in terms of the special effects, here we see a sleeve, and you can't see his hand, and he's dialing the phone. He sometimes appears fully bandaged, other times without, drives around in a cool car. I give him credit for that. They do a nice job when he's driving the car invisibly. And apparently the stuntmen on this show put themselves at some risk to do some of these stunts. So I give them credit because they turned out really, really nicely. Now, a couple other characters on the show who show up pretty often. Lisa Daniele plays Diane Brady Wilson, who is Dr. Peter Brady's widowed sister. Now, she has a very English accent. Dr. Peter Brady does not. He has what people refer to as the transatlantic, I didn't say that well, the transatlantic accent, which was featured in a lot of old movies. It's not an English accent, but it's not quite an American accent either, somewhere in between. Dr. Peter Brady is voiced by Tim Turner. No, not the kid from Fairly Odd Parents. Tim Turner, uncredited. He's credited in the series as just himself because he's real. He does a nice job, though. Decent enough. Again, it's not a show that requires excellent acting. It requires good enough acting because it's primarily about the plot and how the good guys win and the bad guys lose. So in this particular thing, he's phoning her, and you get to see a little bit of the special effects. You see him returning home fully bandaged. This is his niece, played by Debra Watling, Sally Wilson, who's fine, precocious kid, etc. But here we see another nice special effect as he takes his hat off, and you see inside his invisible head, and it moves around a little bit. Here we see like a match floating in midair. Puppetry was done by Jack Whitehead, who had done he'd done some like marionette type series in the UK. I don't think any of the Jerry Anderson stuff, but he did some other ones. Really good job on the special effects. Here we have a guy trying to find him. The actors do a good job of mimicry in terms of the fight scenes, and there are fight scenes. Here we go, lighting a cigarette. Here's the car driving on its own. Here's a guy getting into a fight with the Invisible Man, and another one. So you get the idea. For a show like this to work, this has to be done really well, and it is done exceptionally well in the show. A few times you'll see one that's a little effect that's a little wonky. By and large, the special effects are really pretty good. The other thing that makes this show better than I thought was the writing. You can imagine episodes that are roughly similar to The Saint, which is from a few years after this, but a British action adventure show. There were quite a few of them. There's similarities between all of them, just like American action adventure shows all have a certain similarity to them. You get the same thing in the UK, and this is one of them. But you have to imagine the Saint, in this case, is invisible. And that's where the potential problem comes in, because you kind of know the Saint's going to win in every episode of The Saint anyways. But how does he do it? Well, if he's invisible, how does he do it? By being invisible. You kind of know in advance. It gives him this amazing advantage over the bad guys. And that, to me, is where the show was most likely, in my opinion, going to be screwed up. I did a review a few weeks ago of a 60s British adventure show called The Champions, where you have three individuals who have these special powers. They're superhuman, essentially. And to me, the problem with that show was they rely on those to win every episode. So you feel like the bad guys are at an absolute disadvantage. And you know why. It's not like, oh, it's a clever plan. Oh, how are we going to get out of this situation? Well, it's just, how are we going to get out of the situation? We can jump really high. We're really strong. We can communicate with each other telepathically. That's how we're going to do it every episode. And to me, those scripts weren't generally especially clever in that regard. With The Invisible Man, they do a couple things that I think are really interesting. One of them is, in the episode Picnic with Death, his invisibility is revealed to the public at large. And there's even the news shows up and all that kind of stuff. And so this helps with a couple things. Number one, the bad guys out there are aware there is an invisible man, Peter Brady. So they know he exists. Other people are as well. So you don't have to go every episode, people, oh my God, what is going on? It's a ghost. No. They see something, it shocks them, and he'll say, oh, it's me, Peter Brady, the Invisible Man. And they go, oh, yes, I've heard of you. It seems funny in a way, but it actually, to me, works pretty well in the context of the show and avoids wasting a lot of time with people being in absolute shock that there's an invisible person running around. They know about this. But the other thing that helped was they are pretty clever shows in making you feel like it's not just him relying solely on his invisibility. Obviously, that is the telling thing that helps him win. But they make it a little more difficult for him in most cases. Not in every single episode, but in most cases. So you do get some pretty clever little episodes. And some don't even involve necessarily him going up, well, one in particular, going up against a bad guy. There are some guest stars. I wanted to just point out a few while we talk about some of the episodes that I particularly liked. Crisis in the Desert is, I think, the second episode. Well, apparently the series producers wanted Picnic with Death to be the second episode and have that played as the second episode so that the whole revealing his identity to the public makes sense. It often got played out of order. But Crisis in the Desert, Peter Brady has to go into an Arab country to help some rebels against a dictator who seized power. This is pretty standard fare for British action adventure of the period because of Britain's involvement in the Middle East. The one thing I wanted to point out is that Peter Sallis plays an Arab in this particular episode. A lot of younger people for sure will know him as the voice of Wallace in the Wallace and Gromit claymations. Other folks will know him as Clegg from Last of the Summer Wine. And it's hilarious to me because he's so very British. And to see him playing an Arab, you're just going, this is not the first guy I would have chosen for this role. He does a decent job with it. But so this one is a pretty standard episode, but it gives you an idea from an action adventure standpoint of how it's going to work and what he's going to be able to do. And there's some decent performances in it. I'm actually getting ahead of myself here. In Behind the Mask, there is a man who is apparently deformed, who asks Peter Brady to share the power of invisibility with him so that becoming invisible people will not look at his deformity any longer. But then it turns out that maybe there's something more sinister going on, a potential assassination attempt. I thought that was an interesting use of invisibility. And the fact is, they do know how to make people invisible. They have this radioactive element that can do it. But what he doesn't know, what the doctor doesn't know, is how to make himself no longer invisible. And it is something that he searches for through the series. And there are a couple episodes where he's dealing with that. The episode, The Locked Room, he has to help a Russian scientist who's imprisoned by her government, I believe in London, and he's got to sort of get her out. Pretty good episode. Shadow on the Screen, a ship from an Iron Curtain country. Remember, this is the Cold War era. Figures out a way to use radar to see him. So somewhat negating his abilities, he's got to figure out a way to, I think, get somebody off of the boat. I think there was maybe a smuggling thing going on. Blind Justice, this is an image from Blind Justice. Honor Blackman is in this one. Pretty cool. She is, she's blind, and somebody close to her has been killed by these smugglers. And Brady uses his invisibility to create the illusion that she actually can see, and therefore identify the bad guy. So the bad guys have to try to get her, and that lures them into a trap. So see, that's a way to, yes, he has an advantage, but he's not just using it to sneak around and then punch somebody. Here he's using it to, for example, he has her like in the driver's seat of a car, but he's actually doing the steering and stuff and helping her, so it looks like she can drive a car and other things like that. I thought that was pretty clever. Strange Partners, the bad guys in that one have trained this vicious dog to be able to scent out Dr. Brady. And so again, negates somewhat his invisibility. He's got to find his way around it, get past the special abilities. And that one, we get Peter Troughton in, obviously the second Doctor. He did a lot of shows back in the day. He shows up in quite a few things. There's an episode called The Prize, where he has to go into Russia to get a Soviet writer out. And that's pretty good. There's a whole scene of him going across this landmine strewn field on the border to get through. Really nicely done. Man in Disguise has a enemy, well, not an enemy agent. I think, he's a drug smuggler. He basically, they steal his Brady's passport, and this guy wraps himself in bandages to impersonate Brady to smuggle drugs into the country. And so Brady then has to figure out what's going on and find these guys. So I thought, again, clever use of the whole, he's got to bandage himself. How could bad guys use that to their advantage? And finally, an episode called Shadow Bomb, which involves these landmines that are rigged up to explode when they are deprived of light. So it's like a photosensitive trigger. And the idea that they give in the show, which is a little, but okay, is that if an army is retreating, they can deploy these mines during the day. And if they then are going to retake that ground, when night falls, the mines will blow themselves up, and the army won't have to try to figure out where they are, where they left them, because obviously in a retreat, you might not be that careful with that kind of thing. Okay, little tenuous excuse, but the point in the episode is that Brady's slightly involved in developing the mine, but the two main people, a husband and wife, they're testing it. And the husband ends up basically trapped under this pile of dirt right next to the mine, which is activated. And nobody can get to the mine. And they're kind of in this pit, but nobody can get to the mine without casting a shadow over it and setting it off. So you need somebody who's translucent, the Invisible Man. So that's kind of a race against time. The Invisible Man eventually gets there and manages to, spoiler alert, diffuse the thing before it goes off. Again, this is an old action adventure show, so I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but the Invisible Man wins in every episode. But again, it's about how he does it, and it's often very clever. So a series that I really, really enjoyed. I tend to watch things on a weekly basis rather than binging them. And this is one that I actually looked forward to every week. It's not a real fancy show. It doesn't have complex plots, but the characters are generally likable. The scripts are clever, and the special effects are good. And that was enough for me to want to recommend it to all of you to take a look at it. 1958, The Invisible Man, a British production that was also aired in the United States. Here, let's bring up. There we go, The Invisible Man. So, a decent little series. It's only 26 episodes. You can watch it relatively quickly. They're a half hour, so why not? What say all of you? Any fans of the series out there? Any questions about the series, please leave that in the comments. I'd be happy to answer your questions if I possibly can. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, subscribe, share with a friend. That helps my little channel to grow, and I really, really deeply appreciate when you do that for me. Until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun. Go watch The Invisible Man, and I will see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.